I think you want to come up with a brand strategy. And this is what the book talks about. Really figure out what your brand is. And for me, it's simple, modern residential architecture.
Business of Architecture, episode 175. Hello, I'm Enoch Sears, and this is the podcast for architects, where you'll discover tips, strategies, and secrets for running a profitable and impactful architecture practice. I'd like to invite you to discover how to double your architecture firm income and create your dream practice of freedom and impact by downloading my free 4-part architecture firm profit map. As a podcast listener, you can get instant access by going to freearchitectgift.com. Maybe you, like many other architects, are intrigued by the idea of developing your own projects. Like one of my early guests on this show, San Diego architect Jonathan Siegel, FAIA. Well, today's guest has a different but very interesting, equally interesting focus: passive income. You're going to be simply blown away by today's story. 3 years ago, architect Eric Reinhold started his residential architecture firm on a remote island off the coast of Maine. He faced the challenge of building a successful architecture firm and winning the kind of projects he wants to work on, while also living in a remote location. Inspired by people like Pat Flynn and Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, Eric knew that he wanted to build a business that wasn't 100% reliant on the number of hours he worked in a day. Today, you get an in-depth look at how he has built a practice that combines passive income, products, and service offerings. This information and more you can find in his new book, Architect and Entrepreneur, Volume 2, a how-to guide for innovating practice, tactics, strategies, and case studies in passive income. Now, let's get into today's show. Welcome, Eric, to Business of Architecture.
Thanks, Enoch. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's jump into your idea. I'm really excited for our architects to be able to listen to what you've done. I know you've been working hard for many years, and I've sort of had like this little backseat view as you've developed over the time, as you've come out with your 2 different books. You are an advocate of an innovative business model for architects that at least they should be thinking about, right, in terms of products and services. So tell us about this business model that you want to tell other architects about.
Yeah, well, I think this business model that I've come up with, Enoch, is, something that a lot of other businesses are using today, but architects have really underutilized it. And so it's something that's developed out of necessity for me because I live on an island. I practice in a pretty remote part of the country. And when I opened my practice in 2013, I was trying to find a way to find new clients. And so the internet was really an important aspect of my business. It became the hub of my business. And so for my business model, as I'm looking at, the standard business model that architects implement is a service-based business model. Clients come, you service their needs, you build a house or whatever, the program is. And at the end of that, your relationship is over, and then you have to sort of feed the beast again. You have to find new clients, and there's this constant sort of search for revenue streams. And so I thought, why not take the fruits of that labor and also turn those plan sets into products? So instead of just looking at a service-based business model, I added products to that. And the product side of the business, and the products can be sort of any number of things. It could be books, could be videos, could be teaching, training courses, could be plan sets. There's a whole range of things. But the product side of the business ends up being a sort of passive income generating system that feeds the business all the time. And what I found was when I was developing this model was that the product side of the business would start providing a constant stream of revenue and allowed the service side of the business to be more selective in the clients that I chose. And all of this had the sort of net effect of sort of reinforcing the brand message that I was trying to develop. A lot of architects struggle early on when you're starting a business, figuring out, okay, what project is the right project to take? Is this going to advance the brand message? And I had a very specific set of projects that I wanted to do. And, those projects don't come along every day. And so the product side of the business built some extra freedom and revenue into the business so that I could be more selective and I could afford to wait 1 or 2 or 3 months before I took on another client. And so knowing that, once I implemented that, I started to double down on the successes that I had, and really sort of build this, flywheel, I guess, of passive income that supports the business in so many ways.
All right. And so how old is your firm, Eric?
I started it in July of 2013. So I'm into my third year here.
Relatively young firm. So 3 years. And I know you've been going at this, you've been working hard on both the products and the services side. You talk about approaching your firm in a strategic that's something that's always impressed me about you, Eric, is your strategic focus, your ability to, not necessarily jump at the opportunity, but be slow and methodical in terms of just working on the things that are going to get you to your end goal. Where is that a personality trait? I mean, that's not something that I think us as humans, we don't really have long-term vision. So tell me what's behind that kind of viewpoint and that personality trait you have.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess it's just, I've always been someone who is driven by goal setting and sort of list developing. I have a very set routine that I follow every day, every day and every week. Say on Sunday, I'll set out the outline for the week, and those strategic goals are set, early in the year, and then I revisit them every quarter. So I do have this, I think architects by nature are planners. And so certainly that's a personality trait that I've relied on to be successful in my architecture business. But it's something that I found in my, as I look at this from a business standpoint, it's something that if you have this framework to fill in and really a model to rely on, that you end up getting much, much further in the business. And so I just relentlessly execute on a series of goals. And I find that sort of divvying it down into, quarterly and then weekly goals and then daily goals even, I'm able to just continually plow through things. And I really enjoy testing things. So I'll try something and, there's a weekly goal of trying a new thing every week. And I'll try it. I'll experiment with it. I'll see what's working. And then whatever's not working, I'll pivot and try something new. And so it's this process of continually, not trying to optimize for perfection, but just trying to execute and see what works. And I think, so many people are afraid to put ideas out there and they're afraid it's not going to be accepted. And I am not like that at all. I would rather put something out there, test the sort of minimum viable product and see what's working and learn from the things that aren't working and pivot to the next thing. And so I think, having a framework for where I want to be at the end of the year and then being able to divvy those goals up into quarterly and monthly and weekly goals is something that's helped the firm really build quickly. Because as you said, it's a pretty young business.
Tell me about your daily routines. That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Sure. Yeah. It starts with getting up really early. So I get up at about 5 a.m. and I'll do an initial, writing hit. And I eat there's kind of weird routines. Obviously I have coffee, but then I also try and follow the Tim Ferriss, eat 30 grams of protein, straight off. And so I'll move from the writing routine into, I sort of divide my day into executing, making in the morning and managing in the afternoon. So I'll make all the things I'm going to be producing. That all happens in the morning because that's where my sort of where my best creative energy is. And so I don't even tap into emails until the afternoon if I can help it. I'll sort of schedule late morning for meetings and things like that. And then in the afternoon is really about managing the projects, because I do have this product side of the business and that gets creative focus. Some of my best energies in the morning. And then there's also design work that happens for the service side of the business. That happens in the morning. And then the afternoon is all the managing of those projects because as you know, that takes some time too. So meetings and things like that are pushed there. And so the routine, that's just the sort of basic framework of the routine. I always, the midday shift there, I always exercise. And so that's been a really productive thing. So I'll listen to podcasts and exercise exercise at that time. And so it sort of divides those two halves of the day and provides a sort of boost for the afternoon sessions too. And then obviously you have kids, Enoch, so you know the late afternoons are taken over with kid duties and things like that. And then I try and have a sort of learning time at the end of the day. So I'm taking a master class right now from Werner Herzog on filmmaking, which is something that I'm really interested in. And so I try to end the day like that so that I have this sort of learning boost at the end of the day.
That's fantastic. So you've been very intentional about creating your life. You know, one thing that's come up as we've just chatted right now, Eric, is you talking about pivots. You mentioned some big successes. You mentioned some failures. I'd like to talk to you about how this vision has changed since you started out 3 years ago. Let's get kind of into the weeds and let our audience know what this is really like and what it takes to create something like this.
Sure. Yeah. And I talk about this in the book quite a bit, because I had this vision when and I think a lot of architects are like this, that, if we're thinking about making products, the first thing that comes to mind is like plan sets. And there's a lot of architects who actually do that. And so that was a sort of easy first task for the business. Like, let's come up with some plan sets. And I had designed a house, for myself, and it was a Dwell Houses We Love finalists. And so it had a lot of popularity. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to sell this. But I didn't do it wasn't just the floor plans. It was like the whole shebang. I wanted to sell all the details. And, as a custom residential architect, I'm thinking, okay, this should be 10, 12 grand for a set of really nice drawings. And so I realized pretty quickly that, people aren't in the market for buying, a house that's going to cost $350,000, $400,000. They're not in the market to spend that much on their floor plans. They're not going to do it. And so I reduced the price to $2,500, and I thought, okay, that's reasonable. That's probably as low as I'd want to go for that plan set. And what I learned there was people aren't really willing to spend that much either. And so I ended up sort of price pulsing this plan set up and down and really trying to find a market for this thing. And so I would say that was a pretty big failure. And I say it in the book, it took about 200 days, but I finally sold that plan set. And the day that I sold that plan set, I sort of talk about this, exactly what my, revenue was that day from passive income. So the plan set had sat on the site for, 200 days. I sold it for $2,500. I, had some affiliate income there. I had some advertising income and other digital products that I had started to develop at that day. And so it all sort of coalesced. And I looked at this and I said, okay, there is something here. There's something that's working. And, the sort of little pieces of passive income along the way were pretty small, but the ones that started to build momentum over time, I really started to double down on. So like, something like YouTube now, that's been a really important part of the business. And it's something that I've used to then direct people into my email list and then, sell them plan sets that way. So I really started to kind of throw these little seeds out there and then watch which ones sort of grew as, I was watering them. And the ones that grew, I could learn from, their successes. Okay, this is how it works. So I could sell a plan set, not for $2,500, but I could sell a plan set for, let's say, $500, pretty basic plan set. And then people would say, yeah, but I need this, or I need that. I also need this. And so I took that and I learned from that. And I said, okay, well, there's a separate service for that. And so if they ended up being a good target client, and I looked at the plan set that I was selling them, of course, it's my architecture. I know they're into my architecture. They like this. Let's work together. We start developing a working relationship. And then suddenly that passive set of a plan set turns into a, fully customized solution. Okay, we're going to add a garage. Now we're going to add a guest house. We're going to take all these things. And I realized, there's all of these other products. So I could take a $500 plan set and I could turn it into a $12,500 commission by just attaching these little pieces, and people would buy things along the way, and people are really accustomed to buying products. And so if I put it out there and say, this product's $500 and then the consultation is $1,500 and then there's a set of specs for $2,500, and that suddenly people are like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I've made it this far. I'll buy that. Or I need a window schedule. Of course. Yeah, I'll buy the window schedule. And so all of these things sort of, by experimenting, I found a way forward with it. And it's strategic, I guess, looking back on it, but it's more a series of sort of little pivots and relentlessly executing on those little ideas.
If there are architects out there who want to monetize their plans, for instance, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I think, I think you want to come up with a brand strategy. And this is what the book talks about. Really figure out what your brand is. And for me, it's simple, modern residential architecture. And the brand is focused on, drawing inspiration from agrarian forms, barns, grange halls, real simple forms. And, a lot of people come to Maine because of, looking for a Maine architect for those reasons. And so the brand works pretty well for my business. And so in order to have the plan sets make sense and these upsells make sense, I think you have to really craft them to be brand specific. So I have there's a sort of branded upsell that these plan set customers get. And it's really well thought out, and it really marries well with, the vision of the plan set. They're simple plans. So the plumbing fixture schedules, the upsells for the door package, the upsells for the window package, the interior fit out, those things, they're all very, finely crafted to support that brand message. And so that would be my recommendation. People can go to these plan set warehouses and buy a sort of generic plan set, but as an architect, we're taught to think about these things on a much higher level, on a much deeper level. And so there's so much value that we can bring to this. There's all sorts of upsells that I could think about, that I'm not even really capable of doing. This sort of passive house upsells. California, you guys you have insane energy codes. It's great. You're leading the nation, but there's all sorts of upsells that you guys could bring to plan sets. So really thinking about it from a critical, with a critical mindset, like, what would my clients need? What would these people need? What's the next logical step? And then sort of build, on that to support your brand.
What would you say to architects who may be thinking, Eric, it sounds like you're commoditizing the profession. It sounds like you're commoditizing your design by selling $500 plan sets.
Yeah, that's a pretty common complaint coming from architects. And, my response to that, it generally is, somebody's going to be providing services. There's a need in the marketplace. And so people need homes. And I feel like architects are best positioned to design those homes. Not everyone is going to be able to afford a luxury custom residential service that I provide. And I feel like having a product side to the business really acknowledges the fact that people aren't going to spend, 20, 30, 50, 60. Some of my clients will spend over $100,000 in architectural fees. Like, I couldn't afford that personally. And I'm guessing you probably couldn't afford that personally, but you deserve to live in an architect design home too. And I feel like there are some compromises that are made. Obviously, I can't design a home that's site specific. If I'm selling a $500 plan set, it's going to be generic in a lot of ways, but I can make it really energy efficient. I can make the plan work. I can, give people a functioning home for what is going to be probably the largest investment of their life. It's something they deserve rather than having, a contractor design it on a napkin or, purchase something that from a modular home company that just isn't well thought out. I have some neighbors who purchased those things because, they couldn't afford to work with a designer. And I see the result of what they live with. They spent as much money on their home as I did, and they can't furnish their living room because of the way the circulation works. And so as architects, we can plan the circulation so it makes sense. So you can furnish it. So you can get a lot of natural light. So you can save a lot of energy. And so, I don't think this is, for everybody necessarily, but I do feel like architects have a responsibility to people who are buying homes to provide them with other options.
And I think we're going to focus a lot on the product side of the business during the interview, just because that is something unique about that. So tell me, where does the revenue split happen? Talk to me about the revenue right now in your business, services versus products.
Yeah, so services account for probably 65 to 70% of the income of the business. So, 30 to 35% are coming from products. One of the really interesting things that I did, and I'm just finished my studio here, Enoch, and I wanted to use it as a case study to sort of prove to people that passive income can be a real significant portion of a firm's revenue stream. And so what I did was, as I designed the structure, it's not a huge structure. It's like 12 by 32. So it's close to 400 square feet here. I have a couple of little loft spaces, and it serves multiple purposes. But for a small footprint, what I did was I wanted to take all of the passive income and have the passive income build the studio alone, solely. So as I was sitting in my house, and my firm it's pretty young, it's 3 years old, but it was also getting to the point where clients would come in and they'd have to sit at my dining room table, and it was just it was kind of outgrowing it. If you're asking someone to spend $100,000 on your fee, then you probably need like a formal space for that. So as I'm sitting in my drafting table in the corner of my living room, and I'm watching the construction of the studio take place, I was sort of, tracking the passive revenues versus what I was spending each day. So I'm looking out and I'm seeing two guys working and they're framing. I'm like, okay, it's going to be, that's X amount of dollars here. Okay, what have I made in passive revenue? And the entire studio build was completely financed with passive income. So it really is possible. And, I think as I get larger commissions, that percentage of the product side of the business is probably going to go down. Or if I scale and hire more employees, then, it's possible that math is going to change. But I am always developing new products, and it's something that has been really successful for me. And so I do see it growing with the business.
So you strike me as a technical person. You have some great design strengths, and then also you've been able to monetize YouTube, and it seems like you're pretty handy with a lot of these new technologies. I've been hesitant myself because obviously I have passive income streams and I'm kind of following a similar path. However, I've been very hesitant to recommend that to other architects, Eric, just because I feel that unless they have those skills or they really know how to navigate that, it would be very difficult for them to make it work. I haven't done a productized architecture business like you have, so I'm just curious, realistically, person to person here, for the average architect who wants to, that sounds appealing and they want to go down a similar path, is it even possible for someone who may be a more traditional architect and isn't up on all the latest tools, technology tools, cloud-based tools, upsell strategies, things like that? What do you think about that, Eric?
Yeah, I think, it's a good point, Enoch, but I also think that the tools of technology have really become democratized. If you look at the platforms just for online coursework, they're being made so accessible now. You could, as an architect, record a course for Teachable very simply, with very little technical knowledge. You can write a book. If you can draft a set of plans, the technology is totally accessible. And so, yeah, you may not be able to produce a high quality video. Although, I would argue that even, because iMovie and, Final Cut Pro, these are drag and drop tools. But let's say, that's too intimidating for someone. Writing a book, it's really sort of, it's been democratized by the platforms that are out there. You can drag and drop a book template into iBooks or Blurb. You can drag and drop photos in there and make your own monograph and sell that, and reap all of that passive income very simply. And so I realize there are some technological barriers of entry, but I actually think they're really low once you get into it. And I'm not suggesting that everyone would necessarily adopt all of these sort of productized, ideas that I have that I'm using in my firm. I certainly don't have a course out right now. I'm interested in doing that, but there are, the book that volume 2 of Architect and Entrepreneur sort of presents a sort of model of possibilities. And so people can pick and choose the things that they feel are most appropriate to their personalities. And I do feel like, given the range of products that I, point out, I think there's something in there for everyone. And certainly plan sets are, that's a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. And then the upsells on that are, energy audits and programming consultations and, there's interior design services. So there's a way to take the product side of the business, even with a really simple product, and convert people from the product side over to the service side. And so I feel like that's a great pathway. And, if we were talking about a revenue split, so 30-70 revenue split, you want to try and get people over to the service side of your business so you can sort of hold their hand and help them through the process. And that's a lucrative side of the business. That's undeniable. And so I'm not suggesting to sort of, reject that altogether, but there is a way to take the clients that you're getting and sort of shuttle them into the service side and make a better business.
Where would you recommend architects get started on finding out more about this?
Of course, my book. I mean, that's the number one. And actually, I've tried to make, both the books that I've written, Volume 1 and Volume 2 are complementary. So Volume 1 is more of the sort of inspirational, like I want to start my firm, and then tackling all the steps along the way. So the mindset issues, and then there's practical business, organizational strategies and marketing and those things. Volume 2 really gets into all of the pivots that I made to that initial sort of blueprint, if you will, of the business. And Volume 2 is really kind of a tactical guide that says, okay, if you want to get started, like really making a business that builds on this brand revenue strategy where you have, a product side and a service side, these are the things that you can do. And the chapters, it starts off with a sort of broad brush approach, painting the strategy, but then each chapter is a sort of technical focus. Like, okay, are you interested in courses? Are you interested in writing books? Are you interested in, developing your YouTube channel? And, it takes each one of those steps and breaks it into, a smaller sort of series of steps. And there's one chapter in there called, making your first $100. And it walks you through the process of, what it would be like to develop your own product, where you start. You're going to look at a market. You're going to look at a niche. You're going to try and solve a problem. Then you're going to pre-sell it. There's all these there's sort of four steps there. But it walks you through like getting that first $100. And it's those steps really that build, the framework for applying this to any one of those productized models. So you can take those 4 steps and build any one of the other products that I list in the chapter. So I do feel like it's a resource, a good resource, and it's sort of the only resource, I think, printed resource that's out there specifically directed at architects, interior designers, and designers.
Absolutely, and I highly recommend. Eric's content is fabulous. I can't recommend it enough. So, I did kind of open up that question, hoping you'd tell us a little bit more about the book, inviting us to go check it out. So obviously in the show notes, we'll have a link to those resources if you visit Business of Architecture, the actual blog, the site. Eric, just for people listening here, what's a URL that you want to send them to? Because it's a no-brainer. They, even if an architect has been doing this for years and years and years, they have a lot to learn from what you're sharing here. Where should they go?
30by40.com is my home on the internet, and that's the sort of hub that I'm really developing. And you'll find access to all the other channels in my YouTube channel and things like that. You'll see the books are on there. So 30by40 all spelled out.com.
And that is a wrap. Thank you for listening today. If you're looking for more time, freedom, impact, and income as an architect, get instant access to my free 4-part architect profit map by visiting freearchitectgift.com. The sponsor for today's show is ArchReach, the client relationship management tool built specifically for architects. If you want to systematize your marketing and business development, ArchReach will help you do it. Visit archreach.com to learn more. The views expressed on this show by my guests do not represent those of the host, and I make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you conquer the world.